Alright, good evening ladies. In today's video we're going to be discussing Fantasy Top, which is the newest crypto social app that is completely taking crypto Twitter by storm. And I also want to talk about SocialFi in general. This is potentially one of the breakout niches of this cycle, in the fact, like, if you think of the market cap of Meta, like $500 billion or something outrageous, and then you look at some of the crypto social apps, which are a few $100 million, like there's thousands of X in the difference. And like, I'm obviously not saying it's going to get anywhere near those valuations, but there's still a huge discrepancy and potentially a catch-up play for some of these valuations. So I do think this could be a breakout niche of this cycle. Finally, we're getting a cycle where there's some actual fun and cool apps on crypto, and it's not just all infrastructure. Finally, we can bet and participate in some crypto apps and actually show normies, oh look, this is an app that is better in the crypto version than the web 2 version, and not just say, oh, this is a blockchain and you can buy and trade made up coins on it. So I'm hoping that there's going to be more apps in this cycle and more things to do in crypto. And I think in the end of the day, like, it's always been the apps go to where the users are, is like which chain has the most users. The app will be built on that chain, but I think eventually it's going to be the other way around, where the best apps, like all the chains, are fighting to get the best app onto their chain instead, because the apps at the end of the day will have the final customer. Like, that's what really matters to a chain, is the final end user. And at the moment, it's like we're all just using the infrastructure, we're all using the blockchains. Like, we're not using apps to use the blockchains necessarily, we're kind of interacting with the blockchain almost on the back end, but eventually we're going to be just using apps, and people will be using crypto apps, and they don't even need to know that it's a crypto app. That's hopefully how it's going to work eventually. And like I said, Fantasy Top is just completely breaking out, although it's only been out for like a week. So even though the cards have gone like multiple X's already, and I shared Fantasy Top in my Telegram a few days ago, and my portfolio is up like 2x, which isn't crazy or anything, but if you ever want to get, like, obviously it takes me a while to prepare one of these videos, and I can't tell you what to do. I can't create a video within, a few minutes of me trying something. It obviously takes like a full day to make a full video. So if you want to get the earlier calls, because a lot of the stuff I'm interested in, what I'm always kind of trying to do is find the stuff as early as possible. So if you're interested in those kind of strategies as well, make sure to join my Telegram. The link is in the description. Nevertheless, Fantasy Top, I'm going to explain exactly, like, I still think it's extremely early. It's literally been out for 1 week. Potentially there's a local top right now, but I don't think this app has come to its final conclusion. It's literally just taking off, in my opinion. So I'm going to explain exactly how it works and exactly how to make money from using Fantasy Top, like betting on the cards. But you also have to remember, you're going to be earning Blast Gold for participating on Fantasy Top, because it's on the Blast layer 2 chain, and on top of that, you're going to be earning these fantasy points. So there's going to be an airdrop for the fantasy protocol itself, for the fantasy app. So there's 2 airdrops that you could potentially get for playing on this game, and you can potentially make money on the cards as well. So it's a little bit of a no-brainer to at least get involved or have a look at this app, in my opinion. Before we dive into that, I just want to explain why I think SocialFi could be a big category in the cycle, and why what advantages it has over traditional finance. So as you can see, this is a chart from Asari showing how much money people have already made playing Fantasy Tops, like all the influencers. So maybe I'll just explain how Fantasy Top works, just so you get an idea. But basically, it's like a trading card game, and the trading cards are key opinion leaders, or KOLs, or influencers, or whatever you want to call them, like key personnel on crypto Twitter. And you can basically bet on them, or you own one of these cards. You have 5 cards in a deck, and you can enter into a tournament. And whoever's influencers gets the most engagement during the tournament wins. And what you win Blast Gold, which is like basically the Blast token. Pac-Man's layer 2, the same guy who created Blur, is creating a layer 2 on top of Ethereum, and this is built on that layer 2. This app is built on Blast, that layer 2. And basically you're going to be getting Blast Gold, which is essentially points towards Blast whenever the Blast token does launch. You're getting these fan points, and you can even win Ethereum as a prize as well. So one of the main reasons that SocialFi could really disrupt TradFi. Like obviously it's not going to completely take it over within this cycle, within a year or something. It's going to take a long time. But one of the main reasons is that the influencers on SocialFi earn way more money on SocialFi than in traditional social platforms. So you can see how much Fantasy Top creators earned already. 400 ETH. I think Ansem made 70 grand within a few days just by like having his card on that platform, something outrageous like that, as opposed to the amount of he gets paid by Twitter, which is a couple of thousand, like nothing to sneeze at. But it's completely orders of magnitude in difference. So there's a huge incentive for these influencers to get these people, their followers, to follow them on the new platforms. The exact same thing happened with Friend.tech. All the big influencers on Friend.tech made an absolute fortune, like 6 figures each, just from having a profile on Friend.tech. The reason they make so much money is because anytime someone buys or sells your key or your trading card on Fantasy Top or your key in Friend.tech, as an example, you get a cut of that transaction. I think it was 5% on Friend.tech. I think it's 3% on Fantasy Top. So for Fantasy Top, there's actually a double flywheel. So not only do you get paid for people trading your card, so you want your card to be valued as high as possible, you're also getting more engagement, because the more people that buy your card, the more they're going to engage on your posts, because they're going to get more points in a tournament if you're getting more engagement. All right, so let's dive into Fantasy Top a little bit further. As I said, like, it's taken off completely at the moment, and as you can see, there's actually more unique buyers of Fantasy Top cards already than Ethereum NFTs. And we saw how big Ethereum NFTs got in the last cycle, and we saw how big Friend.tech keys got last summer. If you were around last summer, Friend.tech was like about 1 or 2 months. All people were doing was talking about Friend.tech, and you could make a lot of money in that time. Right now, we're potentially within the first week of an app like Friend.tech that's taken off. But I actually think, like, from a UI perspective, Fantasy Top is definitely better. It's much less buggy than Friend.tech was. Although, try it for yourself. See which app you think is actually better and has more long-term staying power. But I definitely will say Fantasy Top is very fun. So you can either buy packs, and these are going for like 0.4 over 0.4 ETH at the moment, and they started at 0.1. So you can buy a pack and you get random cards in it, and that's probably not a good strategy. Like, obviously there's a chance there could be a very rare card in it. So there's 5 different rarities of cards. So this graphic kind of explains it a bit more. So you can see the different rarities of cards on the right. So there's common cards, rare cards, legendary cards, and epic cards or something like that. And then the amount of stars on the card. So if you look at one of the cards, you can see the number of stars it has. The more stars it has, the more engagement it usually gets. It means like, oh, this key opinion leader gets a lot of engagement on its tweets, so he has more stars, so they're generally more expensive to buy. So you can either buy the packs, and that's usually, like, you're usually going to lose money doing that, so it's a bit more risky, or you can go to the marketplace and try and find good undervalued influencers, because these are all NFTs that you can trade. So you can sell it, you can hold it, and you can enter into tournaments with your cards. So there is different strategies for people with all sorts of portfolio levels. Like, I'm not a whale whatsoever, so I'm sticking with the lower common cards. I might buy some rare cards as well, but I'm definitely not going to be buying epics. I don't have tons and tons of ETH to drop into this project, but there's going to be tournaments for people who only have rares, or people who are in. There's going to be different leagues depending on like how well you did previously. You're going to be up to the next league. And if you're up to the next league, there's going to be more prizes there. So the people with more ETH are going to want to be in the bigger leagues. But that doesn't mean people with only a small amount of ETH to spend can't participate as well, because some of these cards, the cheapest cards are 0.01 ETH, which is like $30. So, I think most people could afford 5 cards if they wanted to get involved. That's the minimum that you need in order to go into a tournament. Or you don't even need to enter tournaments. You can just buy 1 or 2 cards and bet on the price of them going up over the next few days, weeks or months. If you think, oh, this influencer is going to get more and more engagement over the next few months, and he's going to get more expensive, he's going to keep growing, etc., etc., you can actually bet on people, just like in the same way you can bet on people in Friend.tech, you can bet on people in Fantasy. The difference being in Friend.tech, you got access to their chat room, which could be valuable, but on Fantasy, all you're betting on is how much social engagement they're going to be getting on Twitter, because it's completely linked to, the API is linked up to Twitter. So you can come up with your own strategies. There's going to be leagues for just common cards. There's going to be leagues for just rares. Potentially there's going to be leagues just for people who are influencers that only have 10,000 followers or less. There's going to be all these different iterations of tournaments and leagues that you can participate in. So try and think outside the box. But the most obvious thing you need to do is look through the marketplace and find influencers that you think are undervalued for the amount of attention that they're going to get in the next few days or few weeks or few months. If you think they're undervalued in comparison to the people who are at a similar price, that's probably the best one to buy. And you're just thinking from the amount of social engagement that they're going to get, nothing else really. Another thing to note that about Fantasy Top is that there's going to be concurrent tournaments at the same time. So while there's one tournament going on, someone has to put in 5 cards, meaning that they can't also put those 5 cards into a different tournament. So if there's 2 tournaments going on, you want to have a nice variety of cards potentially, or say all the whales are going into one tournament that is has way more prizes and it's going to be way more competitive. There's potentially going to be another tournament at the same time that people with smaller portfolios can try and win some prizes in as well. So personally, I've bought 5 common cards, and now I'm going to buy 5 rare cards. I have 7 common cards, but I'm going to sell a couple of them and try and get 5 rare cards. So now I have a nice variety and I can enter 2 competitions at the same time. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. But yeah, definitely come up with your own ideas. Talk to people who are farming Blast, because they're definitely going to know a lot about Fantasy Top. The other piece of advice I would mention in regards to Fantasy Top is that just after a tournament, people are more likely to sell their NFTs or sell their cards then, because they've used them in a tournament. Maybe they want to switch it up. So potentially the best time to buy cards, the cheapest time to buy cards, is just after a tournament. So if you're watching this video, the first tournament has just ended, so it might be a nice place to enter. And then the best time to sell your cards is probably just before a tournament, as people are scrambling to get cards that want to enter into the next tournament. So you could probably just rinse and repeat that if you wanted. So Fantasy Top is obviously for people who are on completely addicted to crypto Twitter, like myself, who really know what accounts are performing well and what accounts have already seen their peak or whatever and might not be the best ones to buy. So if you're glued to crypto Twitter, that's probably a good thing to be able to play this game well. This is my portfolio. I'm not going to get into all the different people I think are good buys or who might not be good buys, but there's a quick look if you're thinking, who might be a good buy. And the other thing I mentioned is that you might be thinking, aren't these card prices going to go down over time as more packs are open? There's going to be dilution, and this is going to end up like NBA Top Shot. If anyone was around in 2021, NBA Top Shot was really hyped for a while, but there kept being more and more cards of the same cards, and eventually they all lost their value because there was an infinite supply. Well, with Fantasy Top, there's a max cap. I think there's about 10,000 for each influencer. So, there's still a lot of cards, but at least it is capped. It's not completely infinite. People are still underrating how good the Blast airdrop is going to be, in my opinion. The fully diluted valuation of Blast is probably going to be $10 billion or something, much higher than Arbitrum and Optimism, because people are actually using apps on Blast, and it's a complete degen casino, which is perfect for crypto Twitter. People love that kind of stuff, and Pac-Man is going to continually incentivize people to use the Blast ecosystem. So there's going to be really good apps on Blast. So I do think Blast is worth farming, and this is one of the apps that you can use on Blast that's quite fun, and potentially you can make money while doing it, but you're also farming Blast gold, because you'll actually earn gold by participating in these tournaments. And because Fantasy Top is the top app on Blast, they're going to be distributed way more gold. I think Pac-Man is going to just keep giving them loads and loads of gold, because it's kind of drawing a lot of people into the Blast ecosystem. So he wants to make the rewards and the incentives really, really good for people playing Fantasy Top. So I think it's going to continue getting loads and loads of gold to basically the apps on Blast get gold in proportion to the amount of activity they're generating, and then they are able to either keep the gold for themselves, but most of the good apps are distributing that gold as incentives to the users. Now, if you want to get involved in Fantasy Top, you can use my invite code, which is DJInvestor69. I'll leave that in the description if you want to use it. But yeah, I would definitely consider joining it. It's probably still early, and probably I think cards will continue to go up in the medium term. And I'm not sure what's going to happen in the very short term, but I think in the medium term, we're not buying the top in my opinion. Alright, so that's all about Fantasy Top. Let's talk about Friend.tech, which just dropped their token, their long awaited token, and they actually distributed 100% of the supply of the token to the early users of Friend.tech, so that was nice. And yeah, so I want to talk about their V2 upgrades, and if the token is a buy, what you should do on Friend.tech, and if Friend.tech is going to survive and do well and flourish. A quick recap: Friend.tech essentially allows you to buy a key of a Twitter profile and be entered into their chat room. So the more people that want to enter that chat room, the higher the price to enter becomes. And for every person who buys or sells into a chat room, that influencer who owns the chat room gets a cut of that trade. I think it's 5%, and then 5% also goes to Friend.tech. So when you actually saw how much money Friend.tech were generating, it was on the same order of magnitude, or it's nearly the same amount of money that Patreon makes for themselves. Friend.tech was making, Friend.tech has probably 20,000 users or 30,000 users. Patreon probably has millions. So when you kind of think about it, it's crazy. So if you actually extrapolated this out worldwide, like that's why SocialFi could potentially be very, very disrupting. Anyway, back to Friend.tech. What came with this V2 upgrade? So the newest thing was these club rooms. So you got the Friend.tech token. The app has always been buggy, and the airdrop was pretty buggy. Like, no one could really claim their airdrop. Everything was kind of messed up, and that's always to be expected with Friend.tech. I was a little bit disappointed that, they didn't for once make it go smoothly, and the app is, it's actually working all right now, but, it wasn't working when the airdrop was happening and everyone sold their airdrop, or loads of people sold their airdrop for less than $1, which is like less than $100 million valuation. But now the token is pumped up to about $2 at the moment, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. What I did with my token, I sold a quarter of it at around $1.50, and I LP'd it. So I took the Ethereum that I got for selling the token and some tokens, and I LP'd it, because the LP rewards, the liquidity provider rewards, are really, really strong. So if you got an airdrop for Friend.tech, one of the options you can do with the token is provide liquidity for people buying in and out of Friend.tech. And also anyone who buys in or out of club keys is going to be paying a fee towards the LP providers as well. So I've made it a few hundred by being an LP provider, but it probably would have been better to hold the token because it's like 220 now or something. But nevertheless, I want to take a little bit of profits, because they did actually distribute the entire supply, and at $2, that's like a 200 million fully diluted valuation. Still seems extremely, extremely cheap. So what was the big upgrades in V2? Nothing crazy, no crazy upgrades. You still have your key rooms, but the big change that they had, instead of like you have your key, and if you ever entered a Friend.tech room, it was just like the influencer talking to himself. Like, you can ask a question to the influencer, but your question wouldn't appear to everyone else in the room. Just the reply that, like, if the person replied to your question, then they would see your question and they would see the reply. But mostly it's just the influencer talking to no one, to kind of keep I kind of like the idea, but to keep the chat room kind of organized and easy to read, so you can just see what the influencer is thinking about and what he's looking at and what he's aping into, or what products he's using, etc., etc. So it's kind of a clean way, but obviously maybe people want to chat as well. So that's the newest iteration, is a chat room where everyone can talk with each other, and the influencer potentially creates the chat room and is the president of the chat room. But instead of it being priced in Ethereum, these club rooms, instead of key rooms, there's going to be club rooms, and these are priced in the Friend token. So you buy and sell out of them using the Friend token. So they created, I think the whole reason that they created this club room was to create a sink for the Friend token. I think that's the main reason that they actually made this. And I suppose it's nice to have one where it's a club and everyone can talk with each other rather than just the influencer talking to themselves. But I think the main driver of that was to make some sort of utility for the Friend token, which I think was very smart. So there's utility for the Friend token. You can earn really good rewards for LPing the Friend token, and it's sitting at a $200 million valuation. So, like the app, people are still using the app. It's not perfect, and potentially it's not the next Facebook, and like they have melted a lot of fees, and they disappointed with the run out of the airdrop, but I'm still holding my bag, and I'm still holding the majority of my bag, and I'm LPing with the rest of it to try and earn more Friend.tech tokens. So I do think it's probably going to go higher. I think easily at some point in the bull run it'll hit $10, which is a 10 billion valuation. I don't think that's a $1 billion, sorry. A $1 billion valuation would be $10 per token, which, is not very high at all. I think that gets you into the top 100 of tokens right now. So, everyone on crypto Twitter, most people have heard of Friend.tech. It has a lot of like, what are all the tokens in the top 100 that no one's heard about? Whereas Friend.tech, loads of people have heard of it and loads of people have used it. So the strategies with Friend.tech now is you can try and, like, when it first launched, the strategy was to try and find undervalued key rooms, like influencers' keys, so you could buy into their chat room. Now, potentially, the new strategy is to try and find undervalued clubs, because clubs is just kind of starting off. So it's been around for a couple of weeks, so it's not as early as Fantasy Top, and probably doesn't have as much mind share either. But, potentially worth buying into a couple of clubs created by influencers that you like, because, you'll probably get value from being in their club and being able to chat with them directly if you want. And also LPing the Friend.tech token, or just buying the token and hoping for the price to go up. Now, there are other SocialFi platforms, and I'm going to get into all of them. Here's a few of them in this graph here. Another one that I mentioned is called District 1, and that's on Blast as well. So if you don't have a huge amount of capital, and you have a very small amount of capital, but you have a lot of time, I would highly suggest going on to District 1 and farming there. So basically this is like a Discord, it's basically a chat room, except you get incentivized for chatting. Like, you're going to get Blast Gold just for chatting in chat rooms on District 1. So you don't need a huge amount of capital to participate and earn money for chatting, which earn money for trying to find alpha and ask people questions. So it's probably worth doing if you're, if you have a lot of time in your hands. And the other big SocialFi app that we didn't get a chance to talk about is Farcaster. So Farcaster is kind of like it's a centralized Twitter, except you can put up a link to an NFT mint, or you can put up a piece of content that only people holding a particular NFT can view. So Farcaster are doing very cool things. That's on the base chain. So, Base and Blast have all the top SocialFi platforms at the moment. There's nothing on Solana as of yet. However, we want to be farming Base and Blast anyway, so it's probably worth trying out these platforms. So SocialFi is definitely one of the most interesting niches in crypto at the moment, and it's probably going to do well over time. These are the first few iterations of crypto social medias, so they might not be the final iterations, but yeah, Fantasy Top I definitely think is worth. If you haven't joined yet, I definitely think it's worth it, and I'll leave my invite code for Fantasy Top. It's DJInvestor69, and I'll leave that invite code in the description. So that's all for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Cheers.